or
Mhm.
going through it, or they are going through it. Does it ever feel like when you went through it, obviously you went through some sort of an
Mhm.
inventory
Mhm.
of what's urgent, what's not
Right.
urgent, what's
Mhm.
noise.
Mhm.
Do you tally all this up? Do you advise for people like take all your tasks, tally them
Mhm.
up, and
Mhm.
prioritize them? Is that what
Yes.
you went
Mhm.
through? And then
Yeah,
you redefine what's
mhm.
urgent, I'm guessing.
Right, right. And just like with any of this, right? You're going to figure out that the things you thought were urgent and are
Yeah,
not. I
yeah.
was having this conversation just yesterday with somebody because she has 4 kids. And we were talking about the fact that, for the most part, when we make a decision, whatever the decision is, nobody dies. And so we can fix it. We can do it over, we can do whatever. And I think that is a big part of this is to realize that very rarely am I going to make a decision, hopefully never, where it is catastrophic. So if I choose the wrong, now treatment's a little bit different, but I can, there's lots of decisions I make that are not the right decisions. Well, oops.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's not life and death anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
Now, in your experience, Deb, no, there are some, from a company perspective and the vulnerability and the fragileness, I guess, of a CEO. Let's say CEO disappear in 90 days, how fragile these
Mm-hmm.
companies are.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that, a
Right.
lot of companies now are owned by private equity firms and everybody's buying everybody out there. I guess if you're a private ownership is different than private equity owned or, shareholder owned, et
Mm-hmm.
cetera, or you publicly traded organization. I'm assuming in some cases they just parachute another CEO or some VP steps up and becomes a CEO. But in general, in your view, how fragile do you think, or how the reality of these companies?
I think many companies, unless especially a big company, they're not going to be fragile because there's so many levels, so many layers of other management. It's the middle and small size companies where you don't have that big support system. And I have my own business podcast, and so a lot of what we talk about is the fact that a lot of times small business owners think we have to do it all, so we don't delegate. We don't, now I might have somebody else do my taxes. But there are things that we think we have to do it all. And then when that is gone, you've got an issue. But none of us are irreplaceable. Even if we are the founder, the owner. Now maybe it means the business shuts down.
Hmm.
But it is important to go through and figure out
Yeah.
just what it is that is done and what can be delegated, what doesn't need to be done anymore, all of those things.
Do you think, from a people perspective,
Hmm.
the chief people officers
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
whatever they call them nowadays, or HR
Hmm.
person, or
Hmm.
I don't know what you want to call them.
Hmm.
I could go for
Hmm.
a joke right now, but I don't want to do that
Hey,
because some
I
of my
am.
listeners are HR people. So I love them all and they're dear friends of mine. But do you think we've overemphasizing that entire ownership, resilience, we embed that in people, uh, sometimes forgetting that these are human?
I think we do. I think we overemphasize it and we underemphasize things like empathy and compassion. And I think a lot of times we see those as feminine traits, and they kind of are, but it's okay. We can have that. And I find it interesting when, say, a CEO can have empathy for an employee that has something going on, but then it doesn't go both ways. And then you toss in the various rules and regulations that you can and you can't talk about this and that, and then it really gets complicated.